My name is Elena Brooks. I'm 29 years old, and I never thought I'd be ambushed by my own family, over dinner, no less. It was a Sunday evening like any other. The Carters' monthly family dinner, part ritual, part performance, part emotional landmine. I'd even arrived 10 minutes late on purpose, just to mentally brace myself. But none of that prepared me for the words my dad said, setting down his fork like he was delivering a verdict. Aubrey will be moving in with you for a while. I froze, mid-reach for the salad tongs. My heart stopped. My brain scrambled to process. Excuse me. What? My mom chimed in with her trademark sugar-coated cruelty. Just until she gets back on her feet, darling. You have that extra bedroom, remember? And Aubrey? Sitting there across from me, smiling like this was a girls' weekend we'd both been excited about. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a request. It was an announcement. Made in front of glazed carrots and roasted chicken, like my boundaries were just another side dish they could pass around. And for the first time in my life, I didn't shrink. I didn't nod. I didn't fold. I picked up my wine glass, stared my father dead in the eye, and said, calmly but clearly, "That's not happening." The room went silent. The kind of silence that vibrates. The kind that lingers long after the conversation ends. If you've ever had your personal space, your home, your peace, treated like a family asset they get to redistribute, drop a comment. Let me know where you're watching from. Because this is the story of how I drew a line they never saw coming. It was the first Sunday of the month, which meant one thing: the Carters' monthly family dinner. Part ritual, part performance. I pulled up outside the house I'd grown up in, took a deep breath, and reminded myself to keep the peace. But the tension always started long before dessert. The dining room looked like something out of a magazine. Susan had laid out her usual rosemary roasted chicken with glazed carrots, and a wine selection like we were hosting a food critic. She beamed as I walked in, arms outstretched like she hadn't sent 5 passive-aggressive texts this morning. "There you are," she chirped. "We thought you got lost." I kissed her cheek. "Just traffic." My father looked up from the head of the table. "We waited for you. Sit." I nodded silently and slipped into my usual seat. Aubrey, already settled across from me, had a smirk I couldn't quite place. Her lipstick was a little too perfect, her posture too practiced. Dinner started the way it always did. Surface-level chatter, comments about local news, and a few jabs at my overly practical career choices. I half-listened as I passed the breadbasket, thinking of the emails waiting back home. Then, without warning, Dad set down his fork and cleared his throat. "Aubrey will be moving in with you for a while." I froze, still holding the salad tongs midair. I turned my head slowly. "Excuse me?" Mom dabbed the corner of her lips delicately. "Just until she gets back on her feet, darling. You have that extra bedroom." Aubrey beamed. "Just a few months, promise. I'll hardly be any trouble." They said it so casually, as if it were a favor I'd already agreed to, as if my life, my space, my routine were theirs to rearrange. No one had asked me. Dad looked down at his plate like the matter was settled. I set the salad down and took a slow sip of wine. The burn down my throat was the only thing grounding me. I wanted to laugh, at their audacity, at the familiarity of it all. "You can't be serious," I finally said, my voice calm but cold. Susan tilted her head, smiling sweetly. "Of course we are. You two used to be so close." That was before she crashed my car, skipped out on rent, and called me a robot in heels behind my back. Aubrey's eyes narrowed, but her smile didn't waver. "That was years ago. I've changed." Dad folded his hands. "This isn't up for debate. Family supports each other." I stared at the chicken, the way the skin glistened under the overhead light. I could feel something hot and furious bubbling under my ribs, but I kept my face neutral. I'd been taught that silence was safer than defiance, but tonight, something shifted. I set my glass down, firmly, slowly, then looked up. "That's not happening," I said. "And no, this isn't a request." The air snapped. Even the ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hallway sounded louder. Susan's voice was softer now, but every word landed like a warning. "Families help each other, Elena, unless you've forgotten you have one." I learned to shrink long before I knew I was doing it. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that wasn't peaceful, but heavy. It pressed into the walls like fog, into my chest like a weight. I lay on my back, eyes locked on the ceiling, letting the dim streetlight pour through the blinds and paint long bars of light across my arms. Dinner had ended 2 hours ago. I hadn't even bothered to take off my shoes when I came home. My phone buzzed once. Probably Mom. I didn't look. Instead, I turned toward the window and let my mind drift to the old patterns, the ones I was trained to follow like a dog on a leash. Being the eldest meant I grew up knowing which battles weren't mine to fight. I was 10 when Grandma moved in for the summer. My room was the only one with a window that faced the garden, and she loved her morning sun. I came home one day and my posters were gone, my bed stripped. My things had been moved into the basement without warning. Mom had called it an adjustment. I hadn't cried, but something in me quietly folded. Then came the years of babysitting Ethan, even when I had finals. Of sharing my allowance with Lillian when she overspent on clothes. Of giving up sleep, time, space. The idea of saying no never even registered. It was like trying to push against gravity. I remembered once, I must have been 16, when I'd been offered a summer science program, full scholarship. But that same week, my cousin from Ohio came to stay after her parents' divorce, and she needed somewhere stable. My bedroom again. My desk. My quiet. Gone. Mom smiled and said, "It's okay, honey. You're the dependable one. That's what makes you special." The dependable one. What a beautiful little trap. Lillian had always been the golden child. She waltzed in and out of expectations, was praised for showing up late if she brought a smile. Ethan broke 2 phones in 1 year and still got a car for graduation. I once chipped a plate and was given the silent treatment for 2 days. It wasn't that they didn't love me. I think they did, in their way. But they loved most what I could give. My quiet compliance. My convenient availability. The realization hit me, sharp as glass. They never asked. They just expected. I sat up slowly, the blanket pooling around my waist. My throat was tight, but my eyes were dry. This isn't the first time. It just might be the last. I stood and walked barefoot to the hallway closet. It had been years since I'd opened that box, tucked behind coats, holiday lights, and untouched dreams. The document folder was where I kept my lease, tucked away next to the receipts for the washing machine and my passport. I pulled it out slowly, like waking something up. Inside, crisp and deliberate, was the rental contract. My name, my boundaries, my signature. I stared at it like it held a secret I'd forgotten. And maybe it did. Saying no felt like cursing in a church. I had barely touched my coffee when the text came in. "Mom, we'll bring the bed on Saturday, honey. Just clear a little space in the guest room, okay? Aubrey's had a rough time. It's temporary." Temporary. That word again. Like a Band-Aid slapped over a gaping wound. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering, heart thudding. Last time I pushed back, Mom didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. I tossed the phone on the couch and stood up, the tension in my shoulders nearly painful. The apartment, which had felt like mine just last night, now echoed with the threat of intrusion. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stared at the backsplash tile. My stomach twisted with something between dread and defiance. A notification popped up on my screen. Instagram. Aubrey had posted a story, her face tear-streaked, hair messy, curled under a fuzzy blanket. A caption scrawled across the bottom in pale pink. "Some people just don't want you anymore, even when you're family." I didn't have the energy to rage, I just blinked. Rachel picked up on the second ring. "Hey, you okay?" "No," I admitted. "They're coming Saturday." Without even asking. There was a pause. "You don't have to let them in, Elena. Your name's on that lease." "Yeah, but saying no to them feels like, I don't know, like I'm betraying something bigger than myself." "Try betraying yourself less. That's the one relationship you'll have forever." I let the words settle, grateful for her bluntness. Then, almost as an afterthought, Rachel added, "You still seeing Dr. Hartman this week?" I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. First sessions this afternoon. Dr. Hartman's office was smaller than I expected. Bookshelves, a couch that looked like it hadn't been sat on in months, and a white noise machine in the corner humming like a soft warning. She had kind eyes, a notepad she barely touched, and a voice that didn't try too hard to sound therapeutic. I recounted the dinner, the texts, Aubrey's post. My voice cracked once, but I kept going. She didn't interrupt. When I finally stopped, her gaze was steady. "Elena, you're not being difficult. You're not rigid. You're exhausted." It caught me off guard. Not exhausted like tired. Exhausted like hollowed out. I nodded. Slowly. "You've been conditioned to believe love only happens when you overextend. That's not love. That's currency." That night, back in my apartment, I sat cross-legged on the bed and reread Mom's latest message. "Mom, it's not about inconvenience, darling. It's about kindness. About being a good sister. Families help each other, remember? Funny how that only seemed to apply in one direction." I typed out a message, paused, reread it, deleted a line, added it back, and finally hit send. Me. "No one is allowed into my home without my consent. Not anymore." There it was, out in the open. I didn't wait for her reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up my email. My fingers hovered over the keys for a beat before typing. Subject, sublease inquiry, temporary guest. Just a draft. For now. But it felt like drawing a boundary in ink. Legal protection feels colder than love, but infinitely more reliable. I stared at the lease draft for a long time before hitting print. The document was only 5 pages, but it felt heavier than a legal textbook. Lines like, "No unauthorized guests beyond 72 hours," and "Tenant retains right to revoke sublease without cause," weren't just clauses. They were boundaries. Something I'd gone my whole life without. They used to say I was overthinking. Turns out I was underdefending. Rachel had helped me write it. She even added a clause for early termination. "Just in case he tries something," she'd said, half joking. I didn't laugh. I wasn't in the mood for jokes. I was building paper walls, but they were mine. The coffee shop was too bright for the mood I was in. I spotted Derek instantly. Same quiet posture. Same gray jacket zipped halfway like he was never sure if he was coming or going. We hadn't spoken in months, not since that weird community solar panel project wrapped up. But he had always been respectful, present without being loud. That mattered now. He looked up when I approached, then stood to greet me, awkward but genuine. "Hey," he said, eyes searching mine. "Thanks for meeting." "No problem," I replied. "So, 2 weeks?" "Yeah." My bathroom ceiling collapsed. Literally collapsed. Management says it'll take 10 to 12 days. I can pay up front. I slid the lease across the table. "You'll just be in the guest room. Kitchen's yours, but no parties. No uninvited guests." I'm not flexible on that. He read it without flinching. Works for me. I watched his brow furrow at one line. Clause 5.3? Building rule. Guest restrictions. You're covered. But if my mom shows up trying to play landlord, you're my alibi. He chuckled softly. Now I'm curious. You shouldn't be. By the time we got back to my place, Derek had a duffel and 2 books in hand. No fuss, no clutter. I led him to the guest room, bare except for a clean bedspread and a small dresser, and then excused myself to handle what really mattered. I took out the new camera, still in its box, and mounted it near the entrance. It connected to my phone in under 5 minutes. Then I went through drawers and cleared out personal documents, tax files, medical folders, my journals. I stuffed them into the fireproof safe, turned the dial, then sat on the floor for a moment, just breathing. At 7:12 p.m., an email pinged from May Whitaker. Subject: Subtenant approval. Elena Brooks body. Your subtenant is approved under Clause 5.3. Guest restrictions apply. Please notify front desk if duration changes. I stared at the message, rereading it like it might vanish. Not love, not warmth, but structure. Something I could point to. Something no one could take away without consequence. Later that night, I sat in bed with the lamp off, scrolling through my camera feed. One live angle showed the hallway. Still, quiet, safe. Then I tapped into the entryway cam and saw it. The front door. Just sitting there. Closed. For now. Some absences echo louder than footsteps. I zipped the last duffel shut and let my eyes scan the apartment one final time. The living room was cleaner than usual, but not sterile, just stripped of sentiment. No framed photos, no childhood trinkets, nothing they could twist into leverage. They expected me to be soft. I chose silence instead. Derek stood near the entryway, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. I didn't blame him. The poor guy had signed up for 2 weeks of plumbing repairs and instead got cast as a one-man barricade. You sure you're okay with this? I asked. He nodded, hands in pockets. I'll water your plant and keep the camera plugged in. You don't have to talk to them. Just say it's your place. Lease is under your name for the next 14 days. He half smiled. I'm quiet. That tends to confuse people. I handed him the spare keys, then picked up my bags and walked to the door. As I pulled it shut behind me, the click echoed louder than I expected. By noon, I was driving east, away from Huntersville, away from expectations. The Wilmington coastline welcomed me like an old secret. Wind-blown dunes, gray-blue waves, the smell of salt instead of guilt. The hotel was nothing fancy, mid-tier chain. Ocean view if you leaned hard enough out the balcony. I unpacked my laptop, a sweater, and the folder labeled "Just in case." Then I sat on the bed, opened my phone, and tapped into the camera app. The living room stared back, perfectly still. Derek's duffel was against the hallway wall. My couch looked lonely. A ping. Mom. Truck is rented. Get the room ready. See you by 4. I didn't reply. I didn't even type a period just to erase it. Instead, I set the phone beside me and turned toward the window. The tide was coming in. At 3:52 p.m. Thursday, the motion alert blinked on. I opened the feed. The living room lit up as the door swung open. Derek stepped back, calm but slightly hunched. Susan Carter stood in the doorway, a plastic box in her arms like she was bearing a gift. Or a demand. Her expression was pinched but polite, the way one smiles before asking for something unreasonable. Behind her, Richard stood with arms crossed, face unreadable. And then there was Aubrey. She walked in behind them, paused in the doorway, and turned her head directly to the camera, eyes locking with the lens. No wave, no smirk, just a stare. Derek said something. I couldn't hear it. but I saw Susan's jaw tighten. She stepped back. Aubrey said something too, then looked at the camera again. The feed ended after 34 seconds. Back in my hotel room, the screen dimmed. I exhaled. 7 missed calls, all from the same number. I wasn't planning a war, but I was damn sure drawing my battle lines. The key turned in the lock one last time as I stepped into the apartment. Clean, staged, quiet. Derek stood near the windows, arms folded, back straight. The way he glanced up at me told me he knew this wasn't just a favor anymore. It was strategy. This wasn't the first time they made plans for my space. It was just the first time I'd made mine first. I placed the envelope on the kitchen island. Inside, 2 printed sublease copies, a laminated guest access card, and a page of building contacts. I'd highlighted May's number and scribbled beneath it in all caps, "Do not open door unless you initiate it." Derek picked it up, brows knitting. "You've really thought of everything." I didn't look up. Because they haven't, and that's the point. By 10:17 a.m., we were in the building management office. May Whitaker wore her usual navy cardigan and a permanent squint, like everything she saw disappointed her just a little. She scanned Derek's ID, double-checked the sublease dates, and nodded. "You're within the temporary limit. Keep the lease visible, and let the front desk know if you get packages." I handed her a sealed box labeled Private Storage, Unit 4B. Inside were my backup drives, the last photo of me and Grandma, and 3 journals I'd rather burn than let Susan Carter read. "Storage keys in your file," May said, and slid the box behind the desk without a second glance. Outside, the wind picked up. Or maybe that was just my heartbeat getting louder. Back home, I opened my laptop and typed a short email to the building board. Subject: Temporary Guest and Visitor Policy Clarification Body. Effective immediately, no individual other than Mr. Derek Hall is authorized access to Unit 403. Any attempts by third parties to enter should be flagged as policy violation. Please consider this memo formal notification. Rachel responded in under 7 minutes. Language is solid. I'd add, security footage is being recorded and stored independently as part of a private protection agreement. Adds teeth. I copied the line and pasted it in without hesitation. Then I turned my attention to the real teeth. The hallway vent above my unit had a perfect line of sight to the front door. I'd ordered the camera last week. A tiny, battery-backed, motion-triggered model that uploaded to a cloud I controlled. No flashy lights, no notification tones, just silent observation. I slid the unit into place behind the vent and tested the angle through the app. The feed popped up in under 10 seconds. My hallway, empty but humming with tension. I smiled without joy. The last thing I did before leaving again was run a final sync. Both cameras, live, Wi-Fi networks, separate, footage encrypted, labels, time-stamped, no overlaps, no mistakes. I locked the apartment, took a deep breath, and walked away. At the hotel that evening, I opened the hallway feed again. Habit now. Static. Then a flicker. The camera detected motion. Just a shadow outside the door. The feed sharpened. And someone knocked. If love is the weapon, then guilt is the trigger. I turned off the overhead lights and let the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the hotel bedspread. My phone buzzed again. I didn't pick it up. I didn't need to. I already knew what it said. Some new twist on the old script. Some variation of, "You've changed." They didn't ask me to open the door. They just assumed I'd never close it. The air was still, but my mind wasn't. I lay back, the jazz station barely audible in the background. No lyrics, just piano and breathy saxophones. Neutral noise to mute the storm. The notification bar blinked. Instagram, @Aubrey.Carter uploaded to her story. I opened it anyway. It was a photo of her standing beside a moving truck, arms crossed dramatically. The caption said, When blood betrays, you learn to carry yourself. Below it, a broken heart emoji and the tag number family matters. I let the phone drop onto the comforter. Then came the voice message. 3 full minutes from my mother, delivered in her sweetly rehearsed tone, the same one she used at church potlucks and real estate showings. Hi, sweetheart. I just. I keep thinking about when you were 3 and you had that awful fever. Do you remember? You curled up on the couch with that duck blanket. You clung to me like I was the only safe place in the world. I closed my eyes. The music swelled faintly in the background. You've always been so strong, Elena. So dependable. And I know this phase you're going through, this wall you've built, isn't really you. We just want our daughter back. Please don't let this coldness take you from your family. Click. No pause for me to respond. No question asking how I was. Just a script performed into my silence. Rachel's text came 30 seconds later. Rachel, don't negotiate with guilt grenades. I smirked. Barely. Then I sat up, pulled out my laptop, and opened a folder labeled Documents. Inside was a blank file. I titled it emotionaltactics.zip. Dragged the voice message file in, then the screenshot of Aubrey's story, then the transcript from Dad's earlier voicemail, the one where he called my refusal petty, then Mom's email from last week with the subject line, "If not now, when?" I zipped it, password protected it, and dropped it into a cloud folder. Not because I needed the proof, because I needed the clarity. At 6:24 p.m., my phone vibrated again. This time, it was Dad. Just one line. "You're humiliating this family. Fix it." There's a particular kind of silence before someone gets locked out. For good. I sat cross-legged on the balcony of the hotel, cradling my phone like a talisman. The breeze from the ocean tasted of salt and distance, a soothing balm on nerves stretched too thin for too long. The sound of waves crashing below didn't drown out the tension, but it gave it somewhere to go. I didn't vanish. I vacated. With intention. The camera feed loaded on my screen, pixelating slightly before sharpening to the hallway outside my apartment. The timestamp blinked steadily. Nothing. Still. Peaceful. Inside, Derek sat on the living room couch, reading a thick paperback with a worn spine. A watering can sat beside him, damp footprints marking a trail to my potted fern. He adjusted his glasses, turned a page. The scene looked so normal it was almost absurd, like calm before a forecasted storm. I sent a message. Me. Don't open for anyone without my prior approval. No exceptions. His reply came 2 beats later. Derek. Got it. Front lines steady. I spent the rest of the afternoon checking every angle. Doorbell cam, hallway vent cam, elevator feed I'd quietly synced from the shared cloud folder May once gave me access to. Still nothing. Just the occasional neighbor coming home with groceries, or the blur of maintenance carts. By sunset, I could feel it in my chest, like thunder rolling in behind the hills. Not panic, anticipation. At exactly 7:02 p.m., the front door camera caught motion. 3 figures. Dad knocked. Twice. Hard and sure. Behind him, Mom clutched a clear plastic storage bin to her chest, like an offering or a threat. Aubrey leaned against the wall, sunglasses still on, though the hallway lighting was dull and sterile. Her arms were crossed. Her posture screamed entitlement. No words. Just waiting. The camera's mic caught the faint hum of the elevator closing behind them. The hallway stilled. Then the door opened. Derek stepped into frame. Calm. Not aggressive. Just present. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask what they wanted. He held up the printed sublease like a warrant and said, with complete clarity, "I live here. Legally." A beat. Mom blinked. Dad's hand dropped from the doorframe. Aubrey's mouth parted as if she might speak, but didn't. Derek stepped back, still holding the paper. Then, click, the door closed, and the screen froze on their stunned faces. They knocked on the wrong door and found out the locks had changed. The ocean was still dark when I opened my eyes. No alarm, no dream. Just the raw intuition that something had shifted in the night. I rolled over and unlocked my phone. 37 notifications. Instagram, voicemail, text, messenger. Even an email with the subject line in all caps. This isn't how family treats family. I didn't open any of them. They always assumed I'd be too polite to block them. They forgot I read contracts. I muted the group chat, set Instagram to private, then flipped over to the camera feed. Nothing but a timestamp and the faint echo of Derek's footsteps in the kitchen. The hallway outside my apartment remained still, ghost-like in its sterility. No shadows, no visitors, no more attempts to breach the boundary I had, for the first time, clearly drawn. Rachel's message came in quietly, like a hand on my shoulder. Rachel, you're not hurting them. You're letting them feel their own behavior. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Aubrey's Instagram story had a soft filtered photo of her eyes, red, puffy, tear-glazed. The caption read, "Erased by my own sister. I guess blood only matters when you're not the one bleeding." The comments were a swarm of vague sympathy and validation, a few emojis. One friend asking where she was, another saying, "You don't deserve this." I didn't screenshot it. I didn't reply. I just closed the app and opened my encrypted folder instead. From my archive, I compiled the door camera footage. Clip 1, the knock. Clip 2, Derek holding up the contract. Clip 3, the slow motion of the door shutting in their stunned faces. I attached the clips to an email addressed to the building's legal representative, the one Rachel had vouched for months ago when I was reviewing my lease terms. Subject: unauthorized entry attempt, supporting evidence body. Attached are the recordings from the security system, sublease documentation, Clause 5.3, and May Whitaker's written approval dated last week. I hit send. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Dad. "We're coming back tomorrow. This isn't over." I deleted the message without blinking. The reply came minutes later, from the building lawyer. Rachel had copied him in weeks ago, in case anything ever escalated. Subject: unauthorized entry attempt. Body: Elena, I've reviewed the footage and documents. Everything is in order. Also, between us, I know your mother. Don't worry. This won't escalate. I leaned back in the hotel chair, phone still warm in my hand. They had finally hit a wall they couldn't charm, guilt, or bulldoze through, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel cruel for saying no. I felt free. ChatGPT John Noi. Hogoi no la fanboy. I called it boundaries. The apartment felt colder than I remembered, even though I'd only been gone a week. Maybe it was the absence of illusion, of pretending this place had ever really been my own, when, for years, it had been a revolving door of borrowed requests and expected obedience. I dropped my bag at the entry and locked the door behind me with both the deadbolt and the chain. Not because I expected anyone, but because I no longer assumed safety. I used to explain myself. Now, I just document. I sat cross-legged on the living room floor, laptop glowing in front of me, folders neatly labeled, sublease confirmed, cam logs, emotional tactics, legal prepared. Every piece of evidence, every screenshot, every clause was accounted for. The order calmed me more than any apology ever had. The phone rang. Rachel. "Did they try anything while you were gone?" she asked without greeting. "No," I said. "Just guilt warfare." "I saw Aubrey's post." I hummed, not bothering to answer. Rachel knew the rest. Have you thought about what you want out of this? I looked around the apartment. It was spotless, quiet, mine. I'm not chasing reconciliation, I said. A pause. Then, that sounds like something Hartman would say. I smiled faintly. He did ask something similar. That morning's therapy session still echoed in my head. Dr. Hartman leaned back, palms folded over his knee. What is it you actually want, Elena? Reconciliation or recognition? I didn't answer right away. Then, slowly, I want the truth to be spoken out loud. In front of me. No more pretending it didn't happen. No more pretending I overreacted. I want them to say it, to hear it. He nodded like he already knew. Rachel's voice pulled me back, then set the terms. You host the narrative this time. I closed the laptop. The decision clicked into place with the finality of a judge's gavel. I picked up my phone and typed the message slowly, carefully. Saturday, 11 a.m. Café Halcyon. I'll speak. You'll listen. No flourishes, no emojis, no room for negotiation. I hit send. The silence was instant, then heavy, then suffocating. I stood and walked to the window, counting each breath like it might keep me grounded. Buzz. Dad. Understood. Buzz. Mom. We'll be there. Buzz. Aubrey. Fine. 3 confirmations. 3 signatures to a silent contract. The trial wasn't over. It hadn't even begun. But this time, I was the one setting the table. They thought I came to apologize. I came to document. The cafe was half empty, its quiet morning rhythm broken only by the occasional hiss of the espresso machine and the low hum of conversation from the far end of the room. I chose a table near the window. Round, small, exposed. No hiding behind corners. No shadows to disappear into. I placed the printed document in the center, carefully aligned. My iPad rested on the edge, screen dimmed but ready. A cappuccino cooled beside it, untouched. I offered them a chair. They assumed it meant surrender. They walked in together. Richard with his usual tight-lipped expression, Susan with her performative half-smile, Aubrey trailing with sunglasses still on, as if this were some twisted press event and she, the reluctant celebrity. None of them greeted me. I gestured toward the 3 empty chairs. They sat, carefully. Like people unsure whether the table was made of glass or gunpowder. No one spoke. So I did. This won't take long, I said, lifting the iPad and opening the folder marked Family Proofs. Aubrey scoffed. Is this an intervention or a TED Talk? I didn't look at her. You posted this on April 3rd. I tapped the screen. Caption, When Blood Betrays. While standing outside my apartment with a moving truck you never told me was coming. I turned the screen. The photo stared back at them. Aubrey blinked, suddenly very aware of her own reflection in the black gloss of the tablet. Next, I continued, flipping to the next file, is Mom's voice message. 3 minutes. Would you like to hear your own words? Susan's lips parted, but no sound came. I pressed play. Her voice filled the air between us. You were always my responsible one, Elena, but lately it's like you don't even care about this family. What did I do wrong raising you? Why do you think you're so above helping us now? I let it play in full. No interruptions, no defenses. Just her tone, guilt coated in sugar, on full display in public air. When it ended, the silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was surgical. I set the iPad down gently and opened the folder of printed papers. This is a copy of the sublease agreement, signed and filed with the building. This is an email from May Whitaker, confirming that Derek was legally residing in my apartment. And this, I held up a smaller sheet, is a motion-detected photo time-stamped the exact moment you arrived with boxes at my door without notice. Susan's voice broke through first, breathy and uneven. We didn't mean harm. We just thought, you thought, I said, my voice steady, that my space was yours, that my consent was optional, that my silence meant permission. Richard shifted. His fingers pressed into the edge of the table, white-knuckled. Aubrey crossed her arms. Why are you doing this like a trial? I looked her in the eye. Because you never listened when I cried. You only pay attention when I show you a spreadsheet. I turned to Mom last. You didn't just cross a boundary, you built a highway over it, and named it love. That line landed like a knife placed, not thrown. Not for maximum damage, but for maximum clarity. Susan stood abruptly, stunned. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. Richard reached for her shoulder, but I didn't rise. I stayed seated, calm, controlled. Because I wasn't in their story anymore. They were in mine. The moment you stop explaining is the moment you start being dangerous. The cafe's warmth faded behind us as we stepped into the morning light, but the cold I carried wasn't from the air. It had settled into my bones, quiet and precise. We walked in silence toward Freedom Park Lake, the same route we used to take when I was little, before words started meaning less than obligations. Aubrey walked a half step behind me, then caught up. Her voice was softer now, not quite regretful, but trying to sound like it. You always made me feel small. I stopped just long enough to turn to her. I was never trying to make you small, I said evenly. I just refused to disappear. She flinched, but said nothing. Susan had her arms folded, as if shielding herself from an invisible wind. Her heels clicked a little faster than necessary on the sidewalk. Richard trailed, silent, his hands in his coat pockets, jaw tight. I reached into my bag and pulled out 3 folded pages. I have something else to show you. They didn't reach for them, but I handed each of them a copy anyway. I found this last week, I said, after scanning old statements for something completely unrelated. Susan unfolded hers. The lines of her face changed as she scanned the bolded transaction history. $12,000, transferred, from my account. August 15th, 2017. Memo, emergency funds, AC tuition. Aubrey's mouth parted. Wait, what? I never saw that money. You didn't have to, I said. It was routed through Mom's joint custodial link, back when I was fresh out of college and she helped me open my first checking account. Susan stepped forward. Elena, that was to help her survive. She was drowning at that time. I held her gaze. And you used me as the lifeboat without telling me. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice tried to stay stern. You never would have understood. I was 22. I cut in. Working 2 jobs, barely making rent, and you let me believe I was just bad at managing my own money. Richard finally looked at the page in his hands. You didn't stop her, I said, turning to him now, each word clean and deliberate. That was your betrayal. He looked up sharply, eyes searching mine. I didn't know. The sidewalk stilled. Birds sang somewhere in the background, painfully out of place. I stared at him, then said quietly, But you do now. No one moved. The pages fluttered in their hands as the wind picked up, rustling the truth they had tried to bury for years. This wasn't a confrontation anymore. It was an unmasking. Truth doesn't explode. It erodes, and then swallows everything. I didn't post anything. I didn't write a single word. But truth has its own voice. And once it starts to hum, it doesn't stop. It began with a comment. Under Aubrey's latest photo. The same curated, overlit image she always used. But this time, the caption read, Healing through betrayal. Family, hurts worst. The comment came from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. So you were lying all along. Underneath it, another. You mean the apartment you tried to claim was yours? Then more. A slow roll of comments, each one like a pebble falling loose from the cliff she'd built her image on. No shouting, just a gentle crumble. They thought silence protected them. It was only delaying the consequence. By midday, Aubrey had turned her account to private. Rachel sent me screenshots, just one word attached: implosion. I didn't reply. I was reviewing files. One last time. I opened the document labeled Financial Transfers, 5Y Summary, and attached it to an email. No message. Just facts. Line by line, it tallied every transfer, every Venmo, every Zelle. Groceries for Aubrey. Loan payments just until next month. Emergency money for mom's dental surgery that turned out to be cosmetic. Hotel stays. Bills. Groceries again. 3 people. 5 years. Over $38,000. I sent it to the family group chat. Then muted the thread. Within the hour, Richard sent a reply, not through the group, but as a direct email. Don't cut us off. Let's talk this through. I read it once, then closed the tab. There was nothing to talk through. There never had been. There had only been what I'd allowed, and what they had taken. That evening, Dr. Hartman's voice echoed in my head. Revenge is noisy. Boundaries are silent. And silence, Elena, is sometimes the loudest justice. I was brushing my hair when the doorbell rang. I froze. I hadn't buzzed anyone in. My phone lit up. Camera feed. Susan. Outside the building. No plastic box this time. No pretense. Just her. Alone. Crying. She knocked once. Twice. Then she whispered something. I couldn't hear the words. I didn't try to. I didn't move. Eventually, she left. The hallway was silent again. I sat down on the edge of my bed, opened my contacts, scrolled until I found her name. I hovered. Then I pressed delete. The screen blinked once. Gone. First time since high school. Healing isn't soft. Sometimes it sounds like a door locking. It echoed when I turned the key. That quiet metallic click. Final. Deliberate. Not in anger. Not even in fear. Just certainty. The safe was small, tucked behind the closet lining where it had always been. Inside were documents, leases, tax records, a printed copy of the transfer summary, and a single worn photo of me at age 12. Knees scraped, grin lopsided, holding a school science fair ribbon like it meant everything. I hadn't looked at that photo in years, maybe because it reminded me of the last time I'd felt proud without permission. Now, I slid the picture into a frame and hung it by the kitchen light switch. It looked out of place in this modern, muted apartment. But I didn't care. That girl deserved to be seen. I didn't rebuild myself. I reclaimed what they tried to steal. That afternoon, I met Derek for dinner. Not a date, just space. Space with someone who didn't take more than I gave. We ate on the back patio of a small bistro a few blocks from the apartment. The sun dipped slowly behind rows of sycamores, and Derek recounted a plumbing fiasco at his job with just enough sarcasm to make me laugh out loud. The kind of laugh that catches you by surprise. The kind you don't realize you missed. He didn't ask about my family. He didn't need to. Later, in therapy, Dr. Hartman sat quietly after I finished a long breath. I feel angry, I said. Just that. No qualifier, no laugh, no apology. He nodded. And that's okay. He smiled. Yes, it is. I stepped out of the office lighter. On the walk back, my phone buzzed. An alert from my inbox. Subject: offer. San Diego office. Project lead. I didn't open it right away. Just let the title sink in. It wasn't a miracle. It was a door. Back at home, I returned to the safe one last time. I entered a new password, 6 digits no one else would guess, and didn't write it down. Click. Then silence. The good kind. As I turned toward the living room, my phone buzzed again. I glanced down. A single message. Aubrey, I'm pregnant. I'm scared. I didn't open the full text, didn't scroll, Didn't delete, just stared at it, feeling the words settle without entering. Then quietly, almost fondly, I whispered, "Some lessons aren't mine to teach." And I turned the phone face down. They tried to make me small enough to control. I became too whole to reach. The airport was quieter than I expected. No teary goodbye, no rushing crowd. Just the steady hum of departure. Gates opening, voices overhead, suitcase wheels ticking gently against the tile. I sat near gate 17, phone in hand, rereading the message I'd crafted the night before. The subject line was simple: clarification moving forward. The body just as clear. "Hi, I hope this finds you well. At this time, I've decided to pause all contact. This includes visits, calls, and messages. This isn't punishment, it's preservation. Wishing you peace." No signature, no explanations. I hovered over the send button. Rachel had read it already. Her only comment: "No edits. It's perfect." I hit send. I always thought closure was a conversation. It was actually a decision. My phone buzzed again not long after. A forwarded photo. A newborn baby wrapped in a pink blanket. Aubrey's name on the wristband. No caption, no request. I didn't open the image, just slid the notification left, pressed clear. It wasn't cruelty. It was space. By the time the plane began its descent into San Diego, my breath had changed. I hadn't realized how long I'd been holding it. Years, maybe. The ocean came into view, vast and soft and endless. I exhaled, deep and full. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't bracing for anything. At the hotel, I unpacked only what I needed: laptop, charger, one framed photo, the 12-year-old me, still grinning beside her science fair ribbon. I opened the browser, created a new domain, theboundariesjournal.com first post. Cursor blinking. Then I typed, "If you think setting boundaries makes you cruel, ask who benefits when you don't." I paused, read it aloud. It didn't sound angry. It sounded real. I clicked publish. A minute later, a comment notification came in. "Thank you. I thought I was the only one." I closed the laptop slowly, fingertips still resting on the lid. Justice doesn't always wear robes or roar from podiums. Sometimes it's a whisper. Sometimes it's a choice. Sometimes it's walking away, completely whole, and never looking back. Some doors don't slam shut. They close quietly, with a finality that only those who've been betrayed can recognize. I didn't win by shouting louder. I won by refusing to be erased. Justice, it turns out, isn't always loud or cinematic. Sometimes it's a calm decision not to carry the weight of other people's damage. Like the final beat of a long overdue reckoning, truth made no apology, but it stayed. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. If this story moved you, drop a 1 in the comments. If you feel there's more to unpack, drop a 2. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories where justice always finds its way home.